In the small hours of a morning close to Christmas Day, 4 leaders of the Christian Church set out on a pilgrimage to Bethlehem. Pilgrims have been travelling to the Holy Land for more than 1,000 years, but this pilgrimage of peace is not an act of reverence for historic places. It's an act of solidarity with people trying to live in peace amid conflict. Over the next few days, the pilgrims will come face to face with the facts on the ground.
The main motivation, I think, for us was about solidarity with the people in Bethlehem, and particularly the Christians in Bethlehem.
I think there's also a burden of responsibility on those of us who come to challenge the mindsets of those who think they know the situation in the Holy Land, but sometimes can pray in a very narrow and unfocused way.
Maybe it will encourage a large number of pilgrims again to visit the Holy Land.
Bethlehem itself, the way it is, the way it has been for a long time, simply reminds us that the beginning of the new world of faith was itself in the middle of harsh, difficult circumstances, and we can't expect that to be different.
We haven't any army with us, any forces, but I think that we have a very strong power with us of prayer and faith.
The land where Jesus was born was riven by military occupation, religious extremism, political turmoil, and terrorism. It's no different now.
The immediate future, there's not going to be any peace. It's going to take a long time, maybe 20 years.
God is giving us great opportunities, not only in the Christian community, also toward the Muslims and the Jewish community.
All you know about the other side is that you're supposed to hate them after what they've done to you.
If you don't want religion to be part of the problem, you have to make it part of the solution. To try to just ignore religion is to guarantee that it's going to boomerang as part of the problem.
Well, we arrived, of course, to a very, very warm welcome from the local Christian communities, and a slight sense of being feted as celebrities last night when we arrived, which was wonderful, and great warmth from the communities here. And now we've got to go and share a bit in the reality of their lives.
The first day in Jerusalem begins with prayer. In the Holy Land, there is much to pray about.
I'm sure we shall meet hopeful people in Bethlehem, but I'm sure also we shall meet people who need to be hopeful, because there aren't very many signs around that keep that hope alive. And what can we offer? We can't say, well, here's the solution, here's the peace plan for the Middle East. We're not going to be saying that. We're going to be saying that you're not alone.
It's not just that miracles happen, but that the Holy Spirit of God changes people's hearts and changes people's minds. People say, isn't it terrible here in Jerusalem, the place of 3 faiths, the Dome of the Rock, the Holy Sepulchre, the Wailing Wall, great symbols for the communities. Surely here also should be a place of reconciliation between those faiths.
The pilgrimage begins in the old city of Jerusalem, where the pilgrims remember the death and resurrection of Jesus. So their first visit is to the Church of the Holy Sepulchre, which, tradition says, is built over the place where Jesus was crucified and was buried.
Jesus said, "I am thirsty." A jar full of sour wine was standing there. So they put a sponge full of the wine on a branch of hyssop and held it to his mouth. When Jesus had received the wine, he said, "It is finished." Then he bowed his head and gave up his spirit.
In the light of Jesus' resurrection, it is a time of self-examination and reflection on humanity's need for God. The land that Jesus knew has been fought over for more than 2,000 years. Successive wars have culminated in today's cycle of vicious attack and harsh response. In the Holy Land, innocence is the first casualty of war. Miraz al-Azeh was shot while playing with his friends.
أنا كنت ألعب فوق على البلكونة.
They were playing a Palestinian game called Arab and Jaish. Jaish means Israeli soldiers and Arab they mean Palestinians.
كنت بدي أقول لأولاد عمي بديش ألعب. أنا بدي أخذ بارودتي وبدي أطبها.
At that moment, soldiers, the Israeli soldiers from that tower started to shoot.
وجيت داخل وطخوني من ظهري وطلعت من بطني.
The first bullet was in Miraz, and it made this small hole here.
وظلتني أنا داخل مع البارودة. عادي سمعت أختي صارت تصرخ. كل مراس أنت تصوت طلعت هيك.
She started to scream and her hair.
ضغطوا على الجرح ورحنا على المستشفى. في المستشفى هذه كنت موجوع كثير. في نفس الليل اللي جيتها أجونا الجيش الإسرائيلي على البيت. كانوا يفتشوا على سلاح ومعاه سلاح يعني حقيقي مش سلاح بلاستيكي. ففكرت ما تغيرتش بظل احتلال تغيرش. بحب أعيش السلام حرية.
Each side really doesn't believe that the other side really wants a solution. And this, of course, is a situation which extremists can exploit. And well, for as long as we don't have negotiations, the trust is actually going to get worse. So it's very problematic, and at the moment we're feeling very down. All Israelis and Palestinians are feeling very frustrated and very disappointed. So that's another good reason to have the religious leaders visit, to give a little bit of hope and support.
In part 2, the pilgrims hear the forgotten voices of troubled Bethlehem.
I myself, I don't like very much the term Holy Land, because it is to some extent the unholy Holy Land, because the name of God is often misused for many unholy things.
In the midst of conflict, there are those whose lives live out the hope of peace. Koshava Kalashi of the Organization of Israel's Terror Victims is one of them.
הארגון שלנו בעיקר מטפל בנכים, זאת אומרת בכל הזכויות שלהם. הפגיעות הן במלחמות, ובפיגועים של מחבלים, והפגיעות הן מאוד קשות, מעיוורון של עיניים ועד קטיעת של רגליים וידיים. שלי, כן. אני נפגעתי במלחמת ששת הימים, הייתי צעירה מאוד, ואיבדתי ראייה בעין שמאל, ויש לי רסיסים בחצי גוף שמאלי. אני נגד טרור מאוד. אני חושבת שהטרור בא מתוך מקום של קונפליקט בתוך העם הערבי, לא עם היהודים, אלא בתוך העם הערבי. יש איזשהו משהו שצריך להסדיר ביניהם. אנחנו היהודים באמת, אני כמעט בטוחה שאני מדברת בשם כל היהודים, שכן רוצים שלום, כן רוצים, לא רוצים מלחמות. אני אישית מאוד בעד, ואני מוכנה גם לדבר עם אנשים אחרים שכן מוכנים וכן יהיו מוכנים להידברות.
How do you get beyond competitive suffering, the suffering of people whose children have died in suicide bombings, the suffering of people whose children have died at checkpoints because they can't get through to a hospital? What are you saying about human beings and their worth?
In the Gospel, when the angel appeared to the shepherds and he told them of the birth of Christ, then the shepherd said, "Come, let us go to Bethlehem and see the facts on the ground."
I hope that all our prayers will be heard by God.
The whole journey that we're making was born in prayer. And in that spirit, I think we listened to God and heard him saying to us in different ways, this is a journey we should make. So if that's how we began, how this pilgrimage was born, then that's how we enter Bethlehem today.
I want to quote our Lord Jesus Christ when he said, if people will be in silence, stones will cry out.
The four leaders are coming here to tell the world, look, we have sisters and brothers in Bethlehem who need our solidarity.
Certainly equipment is one of the things we lack in terms of buying the major equipment, major specialist surgery equipment.
The Christmas story says God came to be in solidarity with people suffering under a cruel reality. The fact that the four heads of churches in the UK are coming to Bethlehem, and this is a real thing. For me, this is a sign of hope.
I want to open myself to hope. I want to open myself to the possibilities that there might be, under the help of God, a new willingness, a new trust amongst the two communities here, particularly, I mean, of the Palestinians and the Israelis, because what a difference it would make to the whole of the situation in the Middle East.
Bethlehem people would love always that to keep it open for all humanity around the world.
Through the 100 years, the Christian community in the Holy Land moved from being 20% of the population to 2% of the population. It's a result of the wars that we went through. It's a result of the ongoing unrest. It's a result of the political situation, lack of peace.
People are now afraid to visit Bethlehem, say, where is Bethlehem? Maybe hidden somewhere. So we hope that one day Bethlehem will go to its nature and be open once again.
The Christian as minority feels squeezed between forces. Is the fear of Arab nationalism as an ideology to solve the problem of the people here. No lack of democracy, religious tolerance, many factors has contributed to the fact that the number of Christians in the land is on the decrease.
At Bethlehem University, the hard realities of a divided land challenge staff and students every day.
Bethlehem University has around 2,600 students. They are a mix of Muslims and Christians. Most of our students come from the Bethlehem area. Especially this year, we had an increase of students coming from Bethlehem, and that is due mainly to the fact that we are walled in.
Erecting this security barrier, places a wall and places a fence, has certainly reduced the number of suicide bombers that have come in and murdered within Israeli society. But the result is that the ultimate victims of this response to that violence are the innocent Palestinian men and women who simply want to go about their daily business.
They have to go through a system of discrimination, through a system of basically feel less of their dignity, and their dignity is somehow every morning taken away from them.
The pilgrims will meet young people whose lives are besieged by conflict. Al-Mataz is a Muslim student at Bethlehem University. His village is divided between Jerusalem and the West Bank, and the family house is built on contested land. It was demolished, then rebuilt. Just a few days ago, it was demolished again.
We worked hard to build the first home, but we lived on it maybe 3 years, and Israel demolished it. But we worked hard to rebuild the house again. And you can see my house demolished for the second time 4 days ago.
In his life, the results have been catastrophic.
I'm studying IT, computers and communications. Tomorrow I have another exam, math exam. I lost my book and I don't know what can I do for this problem. I have two problems, my exam and my house.
The challenge is not only to physically be at the university, but for us as faculty and staff and people who live the situation, the challenge is to help those students to feel good about what they do, to give them hope, to help them see the point of really facing the checkpoint, really facing the occupation, and look forward for a better future.
They want to build the wall and make many buildings here for the Jewish. And I'm sorry to use the Jewish because the Jewish is very good people. The problem not with the Jewish, the problem with Israel. They want to take our land. It's very hard.
A lot of the students would have difficult times just coming from Jerusalem to Bethlehem, crossing the checkpoints and basically the different points that are designated for them.
Arish Jafari lives in Bethlehem. She is a refugee in a camp where her family have lived since the 1940s.
My name is Arish Jafari. I'm from Deir Rafat village, a Palestinian refugee. My village is between Jerusalem and Ramla city. My parents were uprooted in 1948 and came to live in the Haish refugee camp where we are now.
10,000 people live in the camp. Many are just a few miles from their original homes.
Living in a refugee camp does not mean you have to live in the tent. It just, you wake up in the morning and you feel you're less than other. You don't own anything. You don't have the right to go back to your home. Your identity is almost gone. You're just a refugee. It made me also strong to believe that I have a right and I have the right to fight for my right. There's a lot of ways to fight. I go to University of Bethlehem. I study computers information systems. I work with kids and children and women to educate them about their rights so they would prepare to talk about themselves and express themselves. I'm always very happy when I hear international are coming here to Palestine. Come from Jerusalem and enter in Bethlehem, they will pass the checkpoint, and means that they will see and they will understand who's being the victims and who's the victimizers. They're gonna see the wall who separates the people. And I hope that when they go back, they're gonna talk about what they saw and other people would hear.
Hello, it's the Archbishop of Canterbury here.
Hello, can't hear anything. Hello? I'll try the other.
The visit of the pilgrims provides an opportunity to remind the world of those who seek reconciliation.
Let's talk now to Dr. Rowan Williams and to Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor joining us from Jerusalem. Welcome to you both.
Thank you. Good morning.
Good morning to you. Cardinal Cormac Murphy O'Connor, you've talked about your worries about the exodus of Christians from Bethlehem. Do you share Dr. Williams' comments about the fears that have been posed by the war in Iraq and the challenges that poses to Christians in the Middle East?
The reason why we're here in Jerusalem and Bethlehem is as an act of solidarity with the Christians here. Many of them are leaving, and we feel that this kind of forgotten church here needs to be supported. We should never forget that in the Holy Land there are three communities: Jews, Muslims and Christians.
Do you think, though, that you have been able to make any difference with your pilgrimage?
I think two things. First of all, we haven't come to provide a political solution. The only way there's going to be any difference here in the Middle East is what I would call a change of heart.
We haven't been looking for a quick fix here. We wanted to cement relationships with Christians here. We wanted to encourage Christians in the West to visit Bethlehem. We've also been able during this time to bring some groups of local Christians together, and indeed religious leaders of other traditions.
In this life, I can't tell what's tomorrow. And this is what everybody, the Palestinians, are facing a problem with. We cannot predict anything. We cannot plan for tomorrow. I cannot plan for my future, but in the same time, I need to. And it's very important for us. Bethlehem, the most holiest city in the world in Christmas time, and not only in Christmas time, in all the time, because it's where Jesus was born. It's supposed to be very happy, but it's not. It's very sad. People are very sad. We are sad inside us as a Palestinian. We don't have the freedom to go to Jerusalem to pray. So it's sad. All over the world is happy, but now we are not.
In part 3, the pilgrims encounter the realities of occupation.
I wish that they can come and visit us and see how we are buried alive like that forever.
Israel is transforming the little town of Bethlehem to become one of the biggest open-air prisons.
We are here to say to the people of Bethlehem that they are not forgotten. We are here to say that what affects you affects us.
More than half a decade of suicide bombing has congealed into the world's largest monument to the bankruptcy of conflict. A wall, which, if built across Europe, would stretch from the English Channel to Switzerland. The Berlin Wall was modest by comparison.
Israel is transforming the little town of Bethlehem to become one of the biggest open-air prisons.
The security barrier, the wall, overall, it's not such a great idea. Unfortunately, people go through a very hard time, but when you compare that against suicide bombers, we have no choice.
We are walled in, and accessibility is becoming a serious obstacle for people to access education as well as health services.
We don't want to put it up. It costs a ton of money and it's very ugly. Why would we want to have it unless we needed it?
The fence is doing its job, but it's doing it at a cost.
Their dignity is somehow every morning taken away from them.
There's like one suicide bomb in the last year compared to like dozens the year before.
The minority is the suicide bombers, and the rest are people who are really eager to bring about a much, much more positive future.
It's causing a lot of problems, a lot of pain to Palestinians.
Bethlehem is walled off from the outside world, with only one main way in and out. Claire Amastas is one of thousands whose lives are blighted by the wall.
This street was the main street of Bethlehem, and it was the richest street here. We had clothes shops and supermarkets, and all kinds of restaurants was in the same street. And everybody in all our city from Jerusalem used to come here every night. But now it's completely changed. We lost everything. Everything.
The wall is a sign of some of the things that are most deeply wrong in the human heart. that terrible fear which keeps all of us in one or another kind of prison.
Following close to the traditional route of Mary and Joseph, the pilgrims decide to make a symbolic crossing of the wall between Jerusalem and Bethlehem.
I wish that they can come and visit us and see how we are buried alive like that forever.
Even for prominent visitors, such unhindered access is rare
Do you think this wall is going to affect?
and unheard of in the daily lives of people living inside the wall.
The gate seemed so wide, nobody spoke to us, we were not challenged, we didn't produce our passports, and when we reflected on that, when I personally reflected on that, I felt it was a prophetic symbol of how I wanted, to be.
We are Christians here in the Holy Land where Jesus was born, and we are just ask anybody or all the Christians in the world to help us to live in peace. This is what we need.
We are indeed here to say to the people of Bethlehem that they are not forgotten. We're here to say that what affects you affects us. We're here to say that your suffering is ours also.
All photographers back now. Come on, out of the way, out of the way.
We are not here to visit an ancient and interesting site. We are not here to visit a museum. We are here to visit a place and people whose very existence speaks of the freedom of God to set human beings free.
Christ the Lord has been born for us.
It is that good news which teaches us not to despair, even in the terrible circumstances in which so many of you now live. Unlike the wise men from the East who came 2,000 years ago, we, not very wise men from the West, have not come to pour out our gifts. We have come to receive the witness of your faith, your endurance and your hope.
Here they come, here they come.
Highlighting the many problems being faced by one of Christianity's holiest places.
Mitri Raheb runs a vocational training center open to everyone in Bethlehem.
This center is catering every year to around 50,000 people. But also this same place experienced a lot of destruction. It was on April 2nd, 2002, before sunrise, the Israeli tanks started rolling into Bethlehem. Here they pulled down this big gate with the tanks, and you can see we rebuilt this newly because they destroyed the whole entrance. The first day they were basically shelling and shooting for 11 hours. It was not easy because we weren't sure if we are going to survive. They stayed here for 3 days. They used it as military headquarters. The Israeli soldiers, they just sprayed everywhere. They left basically around $500,000 in destruction. And yet we rebuilt it. We are training people here. So I think it's those stories, they belong together.
At St. George's Cathedral, a children's project addresses the traumas caused by conflict.
Our kids come from different backgrounds, and basically they're coming from the Christian and the Muslim background here in the city of Jerusalem. One of the things that what they are doing is training them at a young age and try to express their feelings, the bad ones and the good ones. And in particular, they have expressed one of their most sad stories, which is the wall.
I don't like walls. It's bad. It's making people hate people.
We think that one day maybe these young kids will come to be figures in society who will be bricks into building not the walls we see in our daily lives, but bridges for peace and reconciliation.
the voices of people like Moin al-Atrash are often forgotten. His life was changed when he was shot during a demonstration. Now he is to tell his story to the pilgrims.
أنا لما ثبت اعتقدت إنه ما في سلام، ما في أي شيء. إحنا كنا نحب السلام وكنا في مظاهرة سلمية، ما كنا في أي شيء. لا كنت أنا حامل مدفع ولا كنت في طيارة. أنا كنت في مظاهرة سلمية. يعني أفقدني كل حياة، كل أملي في الحياة وكل أهدافي.
And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. An angel of the Lord appeared to them, and the glory of the Lord shone around them, and they were terrified.
The announcement of Christ's birth brings hope to the powerless. The best news the world has ever known was not announced in the palaces of the rich and powerful in Jerusalem, but to shepherds living on the edge of society, in the fields outside Bethlehem. The pilgrims gather with other Christians to celebrate the event.
We wanted to come and show friendship and solidarity with you, dear friends. We wanted to say, especially to Bethlehem, you are not forgotten.
Our next song is a prayer for Palestine. As we sing it in Arabic, we invite you to lift our country in prayer.
تعال يا رب بروحك المس أراضينا فلسطين عطشانة لروحك يا إلهنا ارويها ونشوف حقك
لكي نعود يا رب ونذكر تلك الأيام التي يا رب جمعت فيها الرعاة كي يكونوا أول من يبشر بهذا الفرح العظيم، فرح الميلاد. نسألك يا رب أن تجعل من أيامنا هذه أيام فرح وسلام في بيوتنا وفي قلوبنا وفي كنائسنا. نرفع عليك الصلاة يا رب يا من قدتنا إلى مغارة بيت لحم أن نأتي من جديد ونسير نحو هذه النجمة الرائعة لتسطع
بحياتنا تكون إنجيل وسلام يدوم ويملا يملا أراضينا.
The pilgrims travel to Bethlehem University to hear from students at first hand. Their arrival is eagerly awaited.
I'm going to talk to them about being Palestinian refugee girls who was born in a refugee camp, who is going to the university studying computers and who's fighting for her right to live.
I will explain to them the situation here because I think the people in England or in United States or in Europe must know these problems.
The thing that I wanted to say, something that would give me hope, is some visits from like you, people who comes to see and to learn about what's going on in the Palestinian territories, going back to their home, telling our story.
I went to Belfast and I had this experience of genuine understanding. We started this dialogue program between the Protestants and the Catholics. It let me see the bigger picture, that there's somebody else as well in this world. It's not only your point of view, but there's another point of view.
We believe education is one of the first weapons and tools that you can fight against occupation. And I always say what also gives me as a read, a personal hope, is the smile of the kids.
Would love to give you this stone from Mu'taz's house that was demolished twice, just to keep you reminding the way that the Palestinians are living and are still hoping for a better future. What we're asking for is your prayers. You can do a lot.
Not a lot of people knows about Palestinian refugees because I'm a refugee, and I had the chance to talk until even maybe 2 minutes about the Palestinian refugees. He heard these 2-3 sentences about the Palestinian refugees. He seems to be very willing to hear and to understand what people going through in the Holy Land.
I'm happy because I keep touch with Christian and to prove we are a good people in Bethlehem.
We don't need your charity, we need your solidarity, and this is the most thing that we want.
The pilgrims meet Moain face to face. He's grappling with the question of forgiveness, but it's a painful journey.
من هالوضع اللي احنا موجودين فيه، نعيش مثل هالناس، نعيش مثل شباب العالم، نروح ونيجي، ما نعيشش في حرب، ما نعيشش دائما قصف، دائما حواجز، بس احنا مجرد اننا قاعدين جوا سجن. انا اذا حصلت على حريتي وقدرت صرت أنتج في المجتمع وكان شغلي كويس ممكن أسامح، بس طول ما هيك، طول ما أنا ما فيش عندي حرية ولا في عندي علاج ولا ما في عندي أي أمل، ما بقدر أسامحهم.
In part 4, the pilgrims meet people living out hope in the face of hatred.
The deepest personal impact for me has been simply seeing young lives in Bethlehem, like that young life 2,000 years ago.
I saw from a high point the sad political reality of the little town of Bethlehem.
Hope, it's not something we see. Hope, it's something we do.
For the pilgrims, Christmas is not simply an annual event. It is an enduring reminder that the God of the universe chose to be confined within the frame of a helpless child.
Now the birth of Jesus the Messiah took place in this way. When his mother Mary had been engaged to Joseph, but before they lived together, she was found to be with child from the Holy Spirit. Her husband Joseph, being a righteous man and unwilling to expose her to public disgrace, planned to dismiss her quietly. But just when he had resolved to do this, an angel of the Lord appeared to him in a dream and said, "Joseph, son of David, do not be afraid to take Mary as your wife, for the child conceived in her is from the Holy Spirit. She will bear a son, and you are to name him Jesus, for he will save his people from their sins."
The Holy Family Hospital in Bethlehem is open to everybody, and it has a creche which cares for orphans.
The hospital is a great example of the teachings of Christ, in fact, because we are here, we are open to the poor, we are really a message of love to the population, which in its majority around us is Muslim.
Amid suffering and deprivation, the staff seek to express the love of God.
Que tant qu'on ne vit pas, on ne se rend pas compte de quoi il s'agit. Il y a des militaires, il y a les murs. Alors les bébés naissent où, je ne sais pas où, mais dans des situations tristes. Et après on les met dans les poubelles, sur les trottoirs.
The Holy Family Hospital is one of the most advanced hospitals in the Palestinian Authority area. It is equipped to deal with all the high-risk cases and premature cases. It is the only hospital in the Bethlehem district that can take care of premature babies in the neonatal intensive care unit just behind us.
Ces enfants sont ce que vous voyez dehors ici. C'est des cas sociaux graves, enfants dans la rue, rejetés. Alors actuellement, la situation est très difficile. Avant, les jeunes filles arrivaient quand elles étaient en danger, parce que toute jeune fille qui peut avoir un bébé hors mariage, la société n'accepte pas, on les tue pour laver l'honneur de la famille. Nous souhaitons la paix. Je pense que la plus importante, c'est d'avoir la paix intérieure en soi. Et comme moi je suis en paix, je suis capable d'aimer. Si je n'ai pas la paix, je ne suis pas capable d'aimer. Et je pense que c'est ça que l'exemple qu'on peut donner.
A pilgrimage is not to seek the footsteps of Christ 2,000 years ago, but it's to see what God is doing here and now.
I think it's still the case that the deepest personal impact for me has been simply seeing young lives in Bethlehem, like that young life 2,000 years ago, and thinking what lies ahead, what's the cost going to be, what's the likelihood of these children living genuinely human lives, and a feeling of involvement in that cost, I think, in a quite new way, at a new level. I think there's no substitute for seeing the facts for yourself. And by that I mean not just what's going on now, but also that sense of place. Something really happened here. Right, we may not be absolutely sure within 100 yards or so, but what we're talking about as Christians did take place in a real place at a real time. Not in mythology, not in fiction, but it happened. The very first time I came to Jerusalem, I remember my first sensation was, this place actually exists. And I think if you're going to connect with the reality of people now, and what the gospel of Christ says now, and what hope and reconciliation are about today, then it's quite important to come and sense what the holy places are like, simply because they say God is involved in real places, real times, with real people. You get a renewed, a deepened sense of why people matter, actual flesh and blood people matter. And so the challenge arises much more strongly then to engage with what's there to listen, to see.
Thank you for coming out.
Thought for the Day, broadcast live from Bethlehem, provides an opportunity to pass on the vividness of the pilgrims' experiences to audiences back home.
Right. Yesterday, in one extraordinary moment, I saw from a high point the sad political reality of the little town of Bethlehem. I could see the barrier over 20 feet high and the checkpoint and gate through which I and my fellow pilgrims would shortly enter the town of the birthplace of Jesus Christ. The Israelis say it is necessary for their security. The Palestinians say it is choking the life out of their town. There's no doubt in my mind that the barrier is a terrible thing, as a symbol and consequence of the seemingly intractable enmity and political stalemate of the Holy Land. The ordinary people are not the problem in the Holy Land. It is those with power in Palestine and Israel that seem to lack the will to ensure that the hopes of ordinary people are realized. I worry too that this may be true of the international community. Just as he was born into a time of turbulence and suffering, so I am conscious that it is the same today across the Holy Land. But did not the angel say, "Do not be afraid, I bring you tidings of great joy"? In spite of whatever trouble there is in the world or in the Holy Land, or maybe in your own heart, do not be afraid, for Christmas is a time of peace, healing, and reconciliation.
When people ask me, are you optimistic? I say, not at all. I mean, I'm not optimistic. But for me, there is a difference between optimism and hope. You know, optimism means, you know, there will be peace tomorrow. But I really don't believe that there will be peace tomorrow. So hope, it's not something we see. Hope, it's something we do.
I want to really say to folk, go to the Holy Land as we've gone to the Holy Land, and be inspired in the way that we were inspired. humanitarian crisis, for all the despair, for all the deep injustices. Instead of being overwhelmed, pray for Palestine, pray for Israel, pray for these Christians who need our prayers at this time.
Well, next tonight, the Archbishop is back home in Canterbury with more dilemmas facing the future of the Anglican Church, following a remarkable life in a year at the cathedral next.